I didn't have a synagogue. I didn't have a traditional Jewish community as a divorced woman, as a working woman. But what you just said was the very first thing you taught both of my children when you sat with them for their first lesson. You taught them that the Torah was passed on from God to Moses to a lineage of humans that then became your teachers and yours, and then you gave it to my children. And like what you just said, like that's what music is. Like that's the music. So when I think of it like in terms of like the connection with Torah, like our Torah is sung. You know, we have a tradition that you have to chant.
That was my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Mayim Bialik. We were discussing Shooting Yourself in the Heart, written by me and Liz Hanlon, which took inspiration from Psalm 37. I'm Shep Rosenman. This is The Rest is Commentary, where we discuss what songs inspired by the Psalms inspire in my guests. Mayim is best known for her lead role as Blossom Russo in the early 1990s NBC television sitcom Blossom. She also played Amy Farrah Fowler on the critically acclaimed CBS comedy The Big Bang Theory, a role for which she received several nominations and awards. She served as host of Jeopardy for 2 seasons, earning her 5th Emmy nomination, and she's played many other beloved roles on television. In 2021, Mayim wrote and directed the feature film As They Made Us, starring Dustin Hoffman, Candice Bergen, Diana Argon, and Simon Helberg. Mayim also hosts a popular mental health podcast, Mayim Bialik's Breakdown, with over 60 million downloads. Mayim holds a BS and a PhD in neuroscience from UCLA. She authored 4 books, 2 of which are on the New York Times bestsellers list. In this episode, we discuss the difference between poetry and music, Falling Down, King David's Naughtiness, some of our favorite 80s bands, the songwriting process, intertextuality, the inextricable bond between Torah study and music, types of inspiration, and we start writing a song, and there's so much more. Let's start off by listening to Shooting Yourself in the Heart. You were leaning against the door, spitting venom on the dirt, grousing about her too short skirt on an ordinary day like this. Your archery's the fine art of shooting yourself in the heart. Your archery's the fine art of shooting yourself in the heart. Her sandals under shaded trees, your eyes fixed in a distant gaze. You gossiped about her wicked ways on an ordinary day like this. Your archery is the fine art of shooting yourself in the heart. Your archery's the fine art of shooting yourself in the heart. How long can this last? Is it time to let her go? Can you give up all hope of a better past? Of a better past? You were tightening the pipes, yelling that she found you in bed with a troublemaking redhead on an ordinary day like this. Your archery's the fine art of shooting yourself in the heart. Your archery's the fine art of shooting yourself in the heart. Hi, Mayim.
Hi, Shep.
I'm so glad you could join me. Thank you so much for making the time.
Oh, I'm very excited. We've been talking about this, and I've been following your musical journeys and your biblical ones, and I'm really glad to be part of this.
So it's one question, and then we're going to see the roads you take us down. So in the same way that I was inspired by the writings of the psalmist, I offered you a bunch of songs as inspiration. You chose this one, and in the hopes that it would inspire something in you, love or loathing, questions or commentary. And I'd love to hear where it took you, and we'll go from there.
Well, there's kind of a haunting quality to, musically speaking, there's like a deliberateness to the guitar that really kind of drew me in. So musically, that was a real welcoming. And just the chord progression and the kind of, I'm not a guitarist, so it's not like plucking, but sort of the dancing along the strings really felt like an invitation. Like musically, it really felt like there's more here. Like, keep listening.
Right.
And I liked all the choices I had, but this one in particular, I really musically felt very drawn to. I love your voice and the quality of your voice, and there's a real kind of Leonard Cohen affection that
you're making my day.
that I feel. And so this really felt like a great example of that. Like, I've heard that in bits and pieces in other music and other singing I've heard you do, but it felt like poetry. It felt like poetry that went with the music, but also could exist without the music. And I thought that was really cool too. When I looked at the lyrics, I think what really struck me is there's a lot of imagery, in this case about a woman. And, like the first mention of the too short skirt, it's like, I'm intrigued. And then like the sandals and like even the word gossip and wicked ways, like you finally end with a troublemaking redhead, it's a very, like, it's a sexy song. Like there's all this kind of stuff. And I think the reason that I really wanted to engage in this is because, while there's subtext to a lot of biblical writing, and in particular to King David, he wrote a lot that was not lascivious, but that was sexy and sometimes covert. But, what interested me is like when I went to the actual text, like it's not a sexy psalm.
No,
it's really not. So that was actually sort of like what I was interested in, because I was more interested in like, what was it here that drew you to make these leaps lyrically in particular? And of course, like when I think of King David, like I always think of his naughtiness. I think of him seeing another man's wife and sending that man to war so that he could be with her. So like David himself is such a complicated character surrounding fidelity and sex and, like seeing her bathing on the roof. Like that's a thing, which Leonard Cohen obviously draws on in Hallelujah. So that was a lot of what I felt was this like musical intrigue that then really matched well with my sense of like, who's this woman and what's this story? And, how did we get from, also like a really awesome psalm that, echoes a lot of themes that psalms echo. Yeah. This is the way to be, and if you're not this way, you're screwed, right? That's kind of like the Psalms in 2 sentences. So yeah, that was sort of the intrigue. And I also felt, your archery is the fine art of shooting yourself in the heart. I just love that line.
It's kind of physically a hard thing to do.
Yeah,
but wow.
But also, like, that's why it's a fine art, you know? And also, to me, it echoed a lot of significance. When I think of the Torah and the writing, like the 5 books of Moses and the prophets and the writings that, you know, are all from this biblical era, we don't often think about delicate things in the first place, like art, although Bezalel, you know, the artist and young artisan, a teenager, you know, who was responsible for designing, you know, the place that held the holiest thing for Jews, was an artist, right? But I loved that it's so heavily liturgical, the Psalms, and you drew out this notion of, you know, the art of what could be used for war, but is also the symbol of Cupid. It's the symbol of love, right? And yes, very hard to shoot yourself in the heart, but I think for anyone who has struggled in love, it feels like the easiest thing to do.
For sure.
Did I get it?
You so got it. You won. 1,000 points for Mayim. You described the music as an invitation. In the context of the sexiness of it, was it a come hither invitation?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great.
But also there's a tentativeness to it.
Say more.
Just, you know, musically, it's like it really feels like a walking, like an approach, but you don't know what to.
Right. Oh, I love that.
I think I'm a music critic. That's my next iteration of my life. I just got really excited.
Let's start. I love that. I want to kind of bounce around a little bit. So for context, this song was written in something I participated in called the Fearless Songwriting Week. It happens 4 to 6 times a year on the Facebook community. Just go to Facebook, type in Fearless Songwriting, and if you want to join, and Timmy Reardon will get back to you and invite you in. And then, you'll see that there's a community of, I don't know, he has like 400 people on the Fearless Songwriting group, but then in each of the sessions, January, February, April, June, November, there's one I'm missing. Maybe
You're
it's
really
August.
good at naming months.
There are probably 40 to 80 people who actually participate. Among those 40 to 80, 10 to 15 write a song every day.
Wow.
Other people put in scraps. I came up with kind of a bridge, or I came up with the beginning to my chorus. And whatever you do is okay. So this song came out of day 3 of the January 22 Fearless Week. Now, I'm going to roll back even further than that. When I was in college, my girlfriend was a woman named Liz Hanlon, who, if you see the song like written out, you'll see that it was co-written by me and Liz. One of the important parts of our relationship was she was a poet. She is a poet, and I was writing lyrics. I guess I was writing poetry too, but it was really more about the lyric.
What's the difference for you between lyrics and poetry?
The biggest difference between them is that when you write lyrics, they have to be singable. When you write a poem, they don't. September 20, I get a call on my cell phone from a 917 number that looks familiar, but it's not in my cell phone, so I don't know who it is. I pick up and I hear, "Is that you, Sheppy?" And okay, well, Sheppy, it's someone from my youth.
Right. Or me.
Anyone who's family.
Right.
And I'm like, my brain is cycling through. I'm like, I know this voice. I know, this is Paula Blank, formerly Paula Langer. How are you, Paula? I can't believe you recognize my name. Chit chat, catch up. Is everything okay?
Right.
Everything's great. I just read about the Limud North America thing you were doing, and I just wanted to say congratulations on that getting off the ground, blah, 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 blah. Hear all about her kids and all that. And I say, how's Liz? Because Liz and Paula were best friends. They may still be. She said, oh, she's great. She's still working as a trademark lawyer for the Trademark Association. And I say, is she still writing poetry? Because she's an amazing poet. Paula says, I don't know. That's not really what we talk about. Why don't you call her? So I know her birthday is coming up because we're talking in August, and I marked the day.
How long had it been since you had spoken to your ex-girlfriend?
Years. Like when I first moved out here, we would touch base a couple of times a year. Then we got married. Sherry and I got married. And, I would speak to Liz every couple of years.
Got it.
It's been a long time.
Okay. Because some might perceive that as a different kind of opening to get a call out of the blue from your ex-boyfriend saying, "Are you still writing poetry?"
Come hither.
Exactly.
Luckily, she's in New York, so there's none of
come
that.
to my studio.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that one alone. But I call her on her birthday. I wish her a happy birthday. We don't connect. We exchange calls like 6-8 times. I leave it be. But now her birthday is on my calendar again. I guess September 21, I call her on her birthday. We connect the next day. And I say, "Are you still writing poetry?" She said, "I needed inspiration. I don't have time. I need a structure, blah, 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 blah." I'm like, "Well, I'm doing this thing. I'm writing songs inspired by Tehillim. Do you want to write one with me? Perhaps that will inspire you to start writing again." We spent like 4 weeks writing lyrics, like studying Psalm 9, writing lyrics to a song, my first Tehillim song with an expletive. And I finished kind of like the recording of it at the end of December. It ended up being a spoken word piece. We were both big Babe the Blue Ox fans and Laurie Anderson fans. So like we have all that weirdness in us. And I say to her, "Okay, so you're going to start writing poetry now?" Because that's my primary aim, right? And she says, "I don't know. I need a structure." I said, "Well, there's this thing called fearless songwriting coming up." And I say, "I'll send you the prompts." She writes a poem and I write a song. Day 1. Day 2, she writes a poem. I write a song. Day 3, one of us, neither of us remembers who, says we want to do one together. And that's shooting yourself from the heart. So the prompt for that day in Fearless Songwriting was Can't Let Go. And the art is by Evan M. Cohen. And at the time in the Fearless process, I was very much trying to connect the Fearless prompts to Tehillim wherever I could. And that particular week, I did it every day. Now, this last one I only connected one to Tehillim. I don't even remember why I read this one, but I felt like this one connected to the prompt Can't Let Go. There's probably something about letting go in here.
It's in the bridge. "How long can this last? Is it time to let her go? Can you give up all hope of a better past?"
Right. So that's how the song connects to Can't Let Go. I have no freaking clue at this minute how the Tehillim does.
Got it. There's give up anger.
Probably
there's like give up these parts of you.
Just a letting go of anger. That's probably it. Thank you for being better than my memory.
And their swords shall pierce their own hearts.
Right.
And their bows shall be broken.
Right. So, and that of course gets us to the chorus in there. So Liz and I early on learned to take advantage of the time difference. I get the prompt at 9 p.m. Everyone else gets it at midnight. So what I do now is I'll write 10 minutes of a stream of consciousness, usually in verse form, and I send it off to Liz. And then when I wake up in the morning, like I have revisions. And sometimes she's actually revising what I wrote. Sometimes she's like, feh, and she starts again. And I'm okay with either one. At this time, I hadn't learned that cheat. So I just sent her the psalm and the prompt, and she came up with a set of lyrics. And
It also doesn't rhyme.
No.
There's a rhyming couplet of art and heart, but that was the first thing, if you don't mind me jumping in, the first thing I thought, the first lyric is you were leaning against the door. You say spitting venom, and I thought you were going to say on the floor.
Right.
But it's not. And like that automatically, I was like, ooh, there's something different about this song.
Nice. It is ABBA.
That's true, I guess. Dirt and skirt.
Right. Dirt and
but
skirt,
on an ordinary
gaze
day
and
like
ways.
this, right? But on an ordinary day like this, that's the kind of refrain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you don't have to rhyme that one.
Correct.
Yeah, but
You don't have to rhyme that one.
The asymmetry of that is part of what I think creates simultaneous tension because it doesn't rhyme and comfort because we say it over and over again.
Yep. Very Dylan. I mean, that's very Dylan-esque, you know?
Wow. You made my day again. Anyway, she sent me a set of lyrics. I think she had an experience on an Israel program where someone was gossiping about her.
Wow.
And that formed the basis for her first person set of lyrics. And my revision is essentially what you see. I turned it into the third person. I changed the parties around, did a few tweaks here and there. But this is really essentially Liz's lyric. I moved things around to tell the story in a slightly different order.
Well, so here's my question also. So when did the music come in?
Generally speaking, sometimes, like if you opened my voice memos on my phone, you'll see thousands of musical snippets, bass lines, horn lines, guitar parts, whatever it is, lyrics and all at the same time. But in the Fearless context, when I'm collaborating with Liz, it almost always has to start with lyrics.
Right.
So
that's very hard.
Say more.
I mean, for me, when I write or have written, I'm playing on the piano and I'm coming up with chord progressions I like. And then I set words to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand
that.
I
can't even imagine. Yeah.
Try it sometime.
I think I'll have to.
I mean, at this point, I do it both ways.
Right.
So they're both kind of easy, for good or for bad. Like, I don't know if any of my music is, you've used the words Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen today. Like, in the words of Jack Kennedy,
my producer Valerie just thought it sounded super goth.
Well, so I'll get to that. So I read these lyrics, and every time you start with the lyrics first, and it's the converse when you start with the music first, is you have to find something that fits.
Right.
Or that so doesn't fit that it works. So in this case, I was trying to figure out what would fit. And, there's no rationality to this, but what came to mind is it's not on Spotify. I can't find it on Apple Music. It's not published anywhere, but it's one of my favorite albums from the late 80s. It's a live album from Elvis Costello and Bill Frisell. And it's just Elvis singing and Bill Frisell, who's this kind of rock jazz fusion guitar player who played with Mark Rebo and all sorts of other angular kind of cutting edge musicians. And I was like, that's what I hear in this song. So what you hear is my Gretsch guitar, which is a hollow body. I think Frisell
I've got a hollow body.
Thank you. I was not expecting that. He plays a solid body guitar, but I felt if I wanted to do jazzy, I needed to do a hollow body, and I highly compressed it for those of you who care what that is, and I put a wide chorus on it, and that was it. Just try to evoke that Bill Frisell sound.
I was going to say there's definitely a rawness to it, and I think I'm a supreme Elvis Costello aficionado. I'm actually surprised. I mean, I have things that were recorded from cassettes from concerts, but I don't think I know this album you're talking about. But did you find it?
Where? Yep. Oh, and you have to hear that version of that song.
Oh my gosh, 95. Yeah, 1995. But now that you say it, there is a very experimental Costello vibe to it. Because, for those of us who know Costello, but for those of us who know Costello as more than just the albums that he's put out, but a lot of his experimental stuff was very, very raspy, very raw, very playing around, in the intersection of different genres, and that makes sense.
I mean, look, I listened to a lot of Dylan growing up. I listened to Leonard Cohen much later, but Elvis Costello was really my generation, My Aim is True, all that stuff, 1978. He was among my first Columbia Records purchases, him, Joe Jackson, ELO. Those are my biggest influences. I mean, ultimately it became King Crimson and John Scofield and all sorts of other people. Like, my musical influences are all over the board. So when I write songs and find music to fit the lyrics, I often seek a musical template.
Got it.
I before we were chatting, I mentioned Babe the Blue Ox. I wrote a song. I was like, I want to do that Babe the Blue Ox song. Or Valerie mentioned System of a Down. I want this to track System of a Down or Queens of the Stone Age or Leonard Cohen. You
know who does that? They Might Be Giants.
Oh, yeah.
Often do that. And there's an album called John Henry of theirs, a very underappreciated album because everybody just loves Flood, and I get it. But They Might Be Giants, especially because, their original albums were the two of them and a synthesizer. you know, and special effects, like audio effects. It was really like, they were like a two-man band, you know?
I love them. They were a law school band for me.
Oh my gosh. But they will do that. And John Henry in particular, you listen to it and it's like, oh, this sounds like a song that they were making to sound like a bubblegum pop song.
Right.
This sounds like a song that they were making to sound like, you know, a moody new wave song. And it really is so, it's like genre specific. So
they were producing and writing at an age where kind of anything went. You had They Might Be Giants played on the same stations as Tears for Fears, the most highly produced. I mean, and I love both of them. Wow.
I wonder if I can ask, because, you know, there's something in sort of the telling of how, you know, how this was constructed that makes me curious for you, if after, you know, that creative process, if then you go back to the actual psalm and then you see where it feels like it tracks, or is it really just like it can be a tiny inspiration that kicks it off? Because, you know, the thing, and one of the places I think that we connect so well just as friends and, you know, journeyers on the road of life is like, for me, like, there's something godly in everything. You know, there's something divine. It's like, sometimes it's hidden and sometimes it's not. But, you know, that's what, when I was listening to this, I was immediately like, is he referencing this about David? Is this a reference to, you know, God? Like, you know, because that's where I'm trying to make it make sense. But I'm curious for you, you know, was it like the touchstone of it and then it becomes its own thing? Or does it still feel like a psalm to you in some ways?
It's a great question. So, and the easy answer is Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. These and those are the words of the living God. So first of all, I think it's different with every song. There are songs I write where there's like the most gossamer connections to the psalm. And I'm just saying, what does the song inspire in me? And you know, I just go with it because that's what inspiration is. It's not something that's up in your head necessarily. And then there are other times where the inspiration is deeply rooted in the text. Like so rooted in the text that I'm just grabbing lines from the Tehillim.
Yeah.
And
I'd be like, be patient and wait for the Lord. And then it sounds not like a song anyone should listen to.
Unless it's worship music that you like to listen to. Now, I have
if you like to listen to worship music, I've got many songs in my head for you.
Well, it works. By the way, it moves people. That's what moves so many people. I happen to like...
Slaughter upright people. Sorry.
But seriously, take a look at the psalm and grab one line that you think you could use in lyrics if you were going to write a song that was like worship in the background.
Okay. My worship's always in the foreground, but okay. Well, I wouldn't pick anything that's like typically biblical, like the lowly shall inherit the land, right? Like I wouldn't pick that because it's like, it's too many things. But I think I like, you don't want to use the word wicked. That's like, you know, it's a little uncomfortable.
Wicked cool.
But that's right. You know, I think, let me look. I mean, this is just because I'm a religious person. Though they stumble, they do not fall down. Okay. Like I love that.
Great. But so are you going to sing a song? I'm just walking you through the process.
Totally.
Do I want to sing a song, though they stumble, they shall not fall down, moves me? That's what I'm feeling right now. Am I going to sing, though they stumble, they shall not fall down? I'm never going to use the word shall.
Right.
That's like from a contract.
Okay, got it.
Right? So, though they stumble. Well, who's the they? Who's the they? Well, am I really talking about me? Yeah, you know what? Though I stumble, I refuse to fall down.
Right.
Now, is that the greatest lyric ever? No, but it's a lyric I would sing. And that's where it starts. And you're right to ask the question because, look, if you look at these lyrics, the chorus...
Sorry.
What?
Valerie's both the worst person and the best person. She just sent me an image of 3 weebles, and it says, weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Like, I mean, this took me back to... Like, sorry. It never occurred to me
but that's where
that
it's
expression.
from.
That's now I just wrote a song about weebles.
Or the Weebles wrote a song based on Tehillim,
That's right.
the Psalms.
Well, and I guess if I can ask you the next question,
Sure.
then, is that all music is when it's inspired by something? Is it following that thread of this makes me think of this makes me feel that, and you can be 30 steps away from the original thing, but that's what the inspiration, that's where it led you.
Where does music come from, right? My theology, and by theology, I mean the way I think about God, but also kind of the way I think about the divinity of music is that there's music out there in the ether, and it is my job as a musician to try to kind of pull that out and say it in a way that's very much me that other people will understand. I don't always achieve that, but that's the process I'm aiming for. So there are times where you pull it out of the ether, you put it out there, and it comes out on the first try, and it's perfect. And you don't want to change anything. People who listen to it may hate it, but it's perfect for the expression that you want to create. It's everything. It's the deeply attenuated. Right. It's the deeply direct. I wrote one song for this Psalms project where Tehillim talks about David asking God to heal him.
Oh,
I don't know what brought. Oh, you know what I do? I know exactly what brought me to this. One of the bands I played in had a musician who I later learned their child, young kid, had cancer. So I and a bunch of my friends supported their family with some music. And then years later, another one of their children ended up with cancer. And I was going to do that same thing, build a community of supportive musicians. And by the time I got around to it, the child was in her last round of chemo. The song I wrote was inspired by this young girl, not woman, so teenager, preteen. But as I was writing it, this is why I got so emotional before, I had Kim Simon on my mind. And the chorus is, El na rifan Allah, Lord, please heal her, please. El na rifan Allah, El na rifan Allah, please, Lord, heal her, please. That wasn't part of the Tehillim, but it was at the root of what the Tehillim was talking about, and it brought me back to what Moshe said about his sister Miriam. And the lyrics, there are 3-4 verses. Lord, please heal her body and her spirit. Give her the strength, Lord, to heal herself. And then the next verse is, heal their body, heal our bodies. It's super simple, straightforward, not a lot of Tehillim text in it, but that's what came out. Then there are others, like I had a conversation with, and now I'm co-promoting another episode, the episode with Rafi Zaram, where Rafi, who is a biblical and Talmudic scholar, grilled me on the texts. And luckily, I passed the audition, as it were. The song held with the texts that I had supported it. I want you, hear my cry. This is not a plea that by the way, I don't think I look at it the way Rafi does. He looks for a through line because he not only does he have the trees, he's got the forest. He knows what all the Tehillim are saying and how this one connects to that one. Whereas I look at the Tehillim and see, well, what do I want to talk about?
So I have a crazy thing to say, but it keeps coming to me as you talk. And so I think I should say it because I feel like this is the time and place to say it. You know, when you describe taking something that inspires you, right? And then following it through, and then combining it with music. This is going to make, I think, everybody cry. Maybe not. I mean, at least in the room. It's like falling in love. And that's what I kept coming back to, is like finding that kind of musical story is like the way you fall in love with someone.
Can you say more?
Yeah. Can I? Can this hollow body say more? What I kept thinking, and everything you said just kept like fleshing it out. When you meet someone and there's that spark, right? Whatever that spark is actually not the thing. Like that's the start of a journey. Right. And then you learn more and it takes you to the next thing and you get inspired by the next thing and it reminds you of this. And if you want to get like psychologically deep, it reminds you of something you couldn't heal with your mother or your father, you know, and like you wind around and I don't know where this came to me. And then the music that you select after you find those lyrics, like that's the relationship, you know?
Oh, that's so beautiful.
It was, I mean, I feel like it was yours. Like that's, but as you described that, like that's what it kept making me think of. Like, because it's not the thing, right? And like that thing you hope lasts, you know, you hope that that first spark is the thing that you're in love with in a year, 10 years, 100 years. But the fact is it more leads you on this other journey, like to find the thing that becomes a song.
Right. Oh, that's so beautiful. For me, that's the idea that music is love, love is music.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, that's me, right?
Yeah.
This process, like when I started doing it like, okay, it started with writing a Tehillim song because my dad loved Tehillim.
Right.
And I wrote a story about my mom.
Right.
That song was the way of honoring them at their yard sites, the anniversary of their deaths. And I was like, I did one of these. I could do 150. So that's what began the journey. And it's like, that's the spark there.
Right.
But
look where it's led you.
1,000%. Like, and I do all this thinking, like the rationale about it, like, well, so what am I really doing? Well, I'm immersing myself in the text. Okay, the text is one foundation.
Right.
Well, if the text is one foundation, then God is another leg. So, but you can have a table, but even the table has legs. We need a triangle. What's the third leg of the table or the triangle? And ultimately, that's connecting with people. Right? That's why this is a podcast. It could be that it's only my kids who listen to it and they're deeply appreciative of your time. Or it might get an audience of, 200. I doubt it's going to be as big as your audience. But you never know. But at the end of the day, I'm connecting with someone about this thing that I'm very passionate about. And that creates not a virtuous triangle, but a virtuous circle, because now I have other people talking about that which I think is divine.
Yeah.
Whether you decide it's divine or not and believe it's divine, like that's all I can do is talk to you about it. It's up to you to decide, divine, not divine, love, not love.
Well, the reason that feels so true, and so true also like to you and also our relationship, which is why it's, so much fun to get to do this. It's such an honor to get to talk to you this way. You did a very holy act in training both of my children for their bar mitzvahs, and
one of my favorite things to do generally, and they in particular were so beautiful to play with.
Well, and part of like the complexity is, when I first met you, at the time I was married, and your wife found me like at the park and told you, I met this amazing lady neuroscientist. I think she should teach in our community.
This amazing lady vegan
That's
neuroscientist.
right. And I believe you said, did you just meet Mayim Bialik at the park? But, when I think of like how crooked my derech has been, that my journey has not been linear. I got divorced. You saw me through that. You've supported me and my ex-husband in our journey. Like we've been part of your family, your home. I've seen your children grow. I've seen their beauty and their joy and their struggles. Like you've been such a huge part of my life. And, to have that person enter my children into a covenant that way, because I didn't have a synagogue. I didn't have a traditional Jewish community as a divorced woman, as a working woman. But what you just said was the very first thing you taught both of my children when you sat with them for their first lesson.
Wow.
You taught them that the Torah was passed on from God to Moses to a lineage of humans that then became your teachers and yours, and then you gave it to my children.
Yeah.
And like what you just said, like that's what music is. Like that's the music. So when I think of it, like in terms of like the connection with Torah, like our Torah is sung. You have a tradition that you have to chant.
V'ata kisvu lachem es ashira hazos. This is when I started writing songs inspired by the Torah.
Right.
It's the 613th mitzvah, according to the commentator from the 1800s called the Sefer HaChinuch. I don't remember his real name. Sefer HaChinuch means the book of teachings.
Yeah.
V'ata kisvu lachem es ashir hazos means, and now write for yourselves this song. They don't mean the song that follows that instruction, which is Parshas Ha'azinu, Miles'
That was
Parsha.
Miles' Parsha, yeah.
The rabbis interpret this song as the Torah itself.
Right.
So they're inextricably bound.
Yeah.
Torah and song, and that connects you back to the love thing.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's a very Christian thing to say God is love, but God is love. I mean, we're told, Ahava Rabba Ahavtanu, Adonai Eloheinu. God loves us with a great love. And we are also said, V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha. Love God, your God. Like love is at the heart of this thing. That's another song I wrote with my friend Ray Kayanik. Love is the heart of this coup. But I do think that that's what it's all about. We could choose to make things about hate. I hate.
I could write all those songs. I got 613 just in the last 3 years of my life.
But there are some things that hate inspires love in us.
Right.
Whether it's of the thing or it inspires us to do something that creates love. When you were talking about the first teaching that you remember, and I hope your kids remember, I really had chills down my spine. It's so powerful to be part of that in anyone's life.
And it is how you describe music, you know?
Yeah.
It really is. Best episode ever.
Let's take this psalm and write lyrics.
Okay.
So, do you remember which line you picked out before?
I picked out...
The weebles wobble and they don't fall down. What verse is that?
Yeah. It's the end. It's 24. I want to find the Hebrew because I think that's important.
Because the English may not be right.
Correct. Ki yipol lo yut. Sorry, it sounds silly in Hebrew. But yeah.
If it falls, it's not usable, is how I would translate that.
Well, hold on one second. Though they stumble, they do not fall down. Is it if or is it when? It's very hard. Like, I mean, biblical language is it's so different, you know?
Yep.
Ki pol lo yutal. Though, here's another one. Though he falls, he shall not be utterly cast down. That's not right. Oh, also the next line, Ki Hashem somech yado. That's the only 2 times somech is used in Tehillim. That's interesting. Yeah,
wow.
Sorry.
Okay, so the BDB defines tool, tet vav lamed, as hurl or cast.
Oh, cast down. Okay.
I was thinking tool as natal, as in nitilat yadayim.
No, lo'ah.
Natal comes up there in the BDB, but the BDB translates this verse as when he falls, he shall not be hurled headlong.
I mean, if that's not poetry, I don't know what is.
But I don't know how you get to
and
headlong.
And they say that, well, because I think that's the way you'd be.
I see. He won't fall face first. He'll fall backwards.
He'll fall sideways.
He'll fall on a nice little cushion. It'll be fine.
Well, but that's interesting. If I were to write, though, right, you could go from there.
Where would you go?
Oh, there are so many ways to fall.
First thing that comes to you.
I just did it. I just wrote a lyric.
Okay, and what comes after that?
I don't know. What'd I say? There are so many ways to fall.
So many ways to fall.
I don't know. Like critical brain, you know, like already started intercepting.
What's the first way to fall that comes to mind? Well, tell me about a time you fell.
Well, I'm thinking it was my brother fell off his skateboard on an incredibly steep hill.
You know, there's the lyrics.
Okay.
My brother fell off his skateboard.
But that says I would rework those lyrics.
First draft. That's what we're looking for.
On an incredibly steep hill.
Tell me.
There was blood everywhere.
Okay.
And fear. I thought he wouldn't get up.
Well, let's go back to the blood.
This was good. This was supposed to be the opening image of my movie.
No kidding.
My first draft, I wrote this scene because my brother was this like mighty figure to me, you know, as a child, who was an expert skateboarder. He should never fall. And he did.
Wow.
Yeah. It was in the Hollywood Hills. Like I remember the street.
What street?
I mean, like, I don't remember the name of it. I'm saying, like, I remember, how it looked.
What do you remember?
Well, I remember, I mean, it was very steep, like the letter V.
Huh. So did he fall at the base of the V or at the top
On the
of the
way
V?
down. Yeah. And his elbow opened up.
Wow. Did you see bone?
No. I mean, I think my fear was greater than the fall.
So, okay, well, let's just stop there. I mean, if it's up to me, you
Yeah.
or we, whatever you prefer,
Yeah.
are going to turn this into a song.
Okay.
Not necessarily now, but like
Right.
my fear was, hold
What
on,
did I say? Greater than the fall?
greater than the fall. So that's, to me, like, that's my chorus.
Right.
My fear was greater than the fall. My fear was greater than the fall.
Right. So you just take interesting things people say and you make them into lyrics?
Well, you take something that you hope moves people. And, you know, the basic theory, egotistical though it may be, is if it moves me, it'll move somebody else.
Right.
Now, sometimes that's not true.
I'm moved by a lot of things. Valerie and I cry all day.
Well, but so, okay, so do we want people to cry from this?
I mean, I think I always make people cry.
Okay. The crying is because they're moved, not because they're angry.
Right. Yeah.
So in this song, right, this is an earnest, like if that's our chorus,
Right.
or some version of it is
But
our
now I
chorus.
like want to find a psalm that talks about falling or about fear.
Great. So
Is that a thing?
Psalms about, well, there's a ton about
Adonai
fear.
li velo yira.
Well, that's Yigdal.
Right.
Or
I know.
Adonalam.
Yeah, that's Adonalam.
Right, that's Adonalam. Master of the Universe, the
Uh-huh.
psalm we sing every morning,
Right.
or at least Saturday mornings. But the big one about fear is Mizmor LeDavid. I walk through the valley of
Of
death.
the shadow of death,
Right.
and I will fear no evil. Yeah.
Right.
Psalm 37. Here's another reading, which I also like. Though he falls, he will not be overwhelmed because the Lord holds his hand.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I think that's
That is the next line. And when I had my car accident, someone took, I don't know if it was this line, they did a piece of art for me about, because my right hand was damaged. And a religious friend of mine did a thing about God holding my hand.
I think you have to write
That's
a
so
song about
awesome.
this now.
Now I want to.
Okay.
I mean, that's, you know, I think probably for another time, you know, my car accident was very, very traumatic and I had to have 2 surgeries and, you know, my hand was really bad. And I remember I fell to my knees. I mean,
Right
I
after
was
the
at
accident?
Hollywood and La Brea
Mhm.
and I was in shock and my hand was it was bleeding onto the floor.
You remember we spoke
Yeah.
in the moment.
Oh my gosh, I called you from there. And it was a police officer who came over, said, get down on the ground, because I was walking around like, I guess I had just called Shep. And he said, get down on the ground. And I remember I hit my knees and my knees were bruised for weeks. And like, I don't even remember it hurt. I mean, nothing hurt at that point. Like I was out of my mind, but that was the start of a tremendous amount of trauma processing that I started doing, you know, that kind of accident and, you know, all of the surrounding things. So it might be a really beautiful place, you know, for me to call on this falling imagery, you know,
For sure.
and the
So
blood of my brother and
powerful.
it just became great,
Yeah.
right? My brother falling and then me falling
Yeah.
and like, yeah.
Yet you, like Weebles, both got up. But I want to get
Yeah.
serious about that for a
Yeah.
minute. So you talked about the recovery from that injury.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a huge physical component.
Yeah.
But I know from the experience of it that it took it a huge emotional toll as well.
Oh yeah. And I was, you know, at that time very aligned, you know, religiously. I felt very protected. I really
you
did.
Felt like God saved
Felt
you
like
from
God
death.
was holding my hand, you know, and
beautiful.
also like whatever happened was all like, it's all kind of just the universe is going to do, you know, its thing. But yeah, it was, and that's a place where, you know, I do think for me, music has served a purpose, you know?
Say more about that.
I mean, in my recovery, I would play with one hand because one hand could not play. And I would sit at the piano and I would play, you know. I had just gotten Adele's book, like whatever. I think it was her first album. And I had just started learning Adele, you know, and like complicated piano. And I had one hand. And I remember I would sit with my left hand back and forth. Like it was, yeah.
Didn't you also use the piano as a way of recuperating your right hand?
I had to do piano therapy because all the musculature, you know. That's very interesting. And my hand, you know, there's permanent damage to it. And it has been acting up lately in the last week. it has been spasming. With me doing nothing, it has been twitching visibly. I think it was waiting for you to come and talk to it.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm not sure if I believe this kind of thing. Like this, like I want to believe in the woo-woo, but maybe your hand was waiting for this conversation because it wanted you to write a song that allowed you to show that it's healed.
Correct.
I'm getting chills again.
We should same time tomorrow.
We can do another one of these.
It's so fun.
Yeah. So last thing, going back to that healing process, obviously you did all the exercises. Was there an emotional journaling, walking? How do you heal?
I mean, so much of the emphasis, had to be on the physical in that time. And then I had to have a second surgery and they had literally had to open the scar. Like it was so, it was like so, it felt so symbolic, like literally opening that same, No, I think the emotional processing has kind of been like, it's been a since, I got divorced right out, we had been separated. Like it was a crazy time, and I still have scars. Like I have scars on my arm, I have obviously scars on my hand, but my other arm, like, the boys remember so much of that time. Fred was still nursing at that time. And like, he remembers, he remembers so much. He wouldn't hold my hand for years.
Either one or just the injured one?
Yeah. And then, he was very, it was a process. It was a whole emotional process for everybody, I was on Big Bang at the time. I mean, like my life was like in the middle of everything. Really crazy. I think I was nominated for my first Emmy that year. Like it was.
That's right.
It was, but I went to the Emmys with literally blood under my nails. Because like my hand was still, I was that fresh. Like it hadn't fully, the swelling hadn't gone. It was nuts. So yeah, it was there's an emotional process that, I think in many ways had to get suspended, because of all the logistics of like go to work and take care of the kids and,
Right. Well, I'm sure that's a big thing in your life generally. Like,
I liked it better when I was asking you things. Yeah.
Okay,
my hands are full. My hands are full.
Wow.
Yeah.
And thank God they can be.
That's right.
You can use them
That's
again.
right. Not as good as they used to be, but yes.
Do you still feel like God holds your hand?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's, honestly, in many ways, that scar, like my scars are like a reminder, of where I was held, And I would have felt that way if I had lost my thumb. Like I really, like that's still what would have happened, Yeah.
The whole God thing is fascinating. We could probably spend at least another few hours on that. But for me, God is in the details, and these are the details that I love to play with. As a lawyer, I'm in the details all the time.
Right.
But I'm in the details in a different way with the Psalms, and that's when I feel that kind of healing. I don't feel that God holds my hand per se, but I feel like God is saying, "New Shep, I'm giving you lyrics here."
Right.
Like that's where my relationship comes in. And like the scary part for me is like, okay, did I pick it up? Right? Or like, did I do a pretty good job of like getting this thing that has the potential to be a divine experience for someone across in a way that it moves them, which brings us full circle back to love.
Sweet.
You're awesome.
You're
Thank you so,
awesome.
so much.
This was really great. I would love to do another one.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for listening. Special thanks to Mayim Bialik for joining me, to Valerie Floyd, Emil Stern, and E. Rose for their help in producing this episode, to Jessica Chana Sweedler for her help on social media, to Liz Hanlon for co-writing the song with me, and to Timmy Reardon and the Fearless Songwriter Gang, who also regularly serve as inspiration and support for the many songs that come out of the Fearless Songwriter Challenges, which you can join on Facebook, or you can ask me about it. You can find Shooting Yourself in the Heart and all of the other songs in this song cycle on most platforms that stream or download music, including Spotify and Apple. In the next episode of The Rest is Commentary, I will be talking to my friends Brian Michael Bendis, also known as Bendis, and Rabbi Michael Shefren, also known as Stick. We're going to talk about how it is that two people with different but deep religious backgrounds can approach using their common religion as inspiration for creation so differently from each other. The difference between giving over your thoughts and giving over someone else's thoughts. We'll discuss memories of Manischewitz wine and drinking other unexpected things. The difference between factual accuracy and emotional truth in telling a story. remembering the dead, and so much more. Please join us.